my shoes and out the door. 5, I'm alive. 6, 7, 8, feeling great.
Are you ready to wake your inner goddess? This is Dr. Noah, 1/3 of your BYWG team. I have an exciting announcement. The full Getting to Goddess program is on summer sale for only $147. That's a savings of over $500. The direct link to save will be in the show notes. Enjoy the podcast. Hello, loyal BYWG podcast listeners. This is Dr. Noah. We wanted to make you aware of our never-before featured Book of the Month, Product of the Month, and our first ever course, Certification of the Month, for July 2018. Please keep in mind all the links, discount codes, and special offers for the book, product, and course will be listed in the show notes in iTunes, in our weekly newsletter, and on our website at www.beyondyourwildestgenes.com at the Listen Now tab. Our book of the month is The Overfat Pandemic, Exposing the Problem and Its Simple Solution for Everyone Who Needs to Eliminate Excess Body Fat by Dr. Philip Maffetone. Our product of the month is the one and only Instapot. The Instapot Duo Plus 60 is a 6-quart, 9-in-1 multi-use programmable pressure cooker, slow cooker, rice cooker, yogurt maker, egg cooker, saute, steamer, warmer, and sterilizer. Our certification course of the month is the Primal Health Coaching Program. As you know, both Dr. Mike and I are certified and love the course. The Primal Health Coach Program provides the most in-depth and up-to-date ancestral health education in the world, equipping you with an arsenal of well-informed alternative choices based on science and experience in order to best serve your clients' goals. Enjoy the upcoming podcast. Hello and welcome back to Beyond Your Wildest Genes podcast. My name is Dr. Noah DeCoyer and I am your co-host. Today I'm super excited to have my friend Dr. Guillermo Ruiz as our guest, actually a return guest. How are you, my friend?
Doing really well, just came back from the office and ready to, knock this out of the park.
Nice. So I'm going to do your updated bio because you're no longer a student and you're a practicing doctor. So let's get this started. Dr. Guillermo Ruiz NMD graduated from the Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine. Prior to his doctorate, Dr. Ruiz spent his childhood in Mexico before moving to Florida in 1996. Dr. Ruiz finished a Bachelor of Science Degree in Medical Sciences and a minor in Health Services Administration at the University of Central Florida. While pursuing his bachelor's degree, he worked at the Arnold Palmer Hospital of Children as an advanced clinical tech. He worked under an incredible team of doctors and nurses in the Pediatric Emergency Department and Level 1 Trauma Center. He witnessed the amazing state-of-the-art care in emergency medicine, but also learned of a larger healthcare system in disarray. He used this new perspective and a passion for evidence-based medicine to change his life. By changing his diet, learning about proper movement, and implementing optimal lifestyle habits, he was able to improve his personal health and find a calling in naturopathic medicine. At that point, he decided to further his career with a focus on finding and removing the underlying obstacles to health. While attending SCNM, Dr. Ruiz became interested in the treatment of endocrine disease with a focus on thyroid health. Under the mentorship of Dr. Alan Christensen, Dr. Ruiz expanded his knowledge on the treatment of Hashimoto's and Graves' disease and has completed advanced endocrinology training in order to better address and resolve endocrine diseases. Dr. Ruiz has a deep love for botanical medicine and has presented nationally and internationally on this topic. He currently holds a position as a research assistant at SCNM and works part-time as a researcher at the Arizona State University Biodesign Institute. His research focuses in the prevention, control, and treatment of multi-drug resistant bacteria and viruses with the use of botanicals and other natural occurring substances such as amino acids and minerals. In his spare time, Dr. Ruiz hosts his own podcast, 3030 Health, where he interviews the most influential personalities in the health movement. Dr. Ruiz strives to advance naturopathic practices with an evidence-based medicine approach. So if you'd like to hear some of the backstory of Dr. Ruiz and want to listen to our first interview, you can go to www.beyondyourwildestgenes.com at the Listen Now tab or check out our YouTube channel. So my friend...
Well, that was a mouthful.
I know. Well, you know what? I figured I was going to read the whole thing, so there it is. So last time we interviewed you, you were in the last quarter or last semester of naturopathic school. You've graduated a year or two ago. So tell our audience, what have you been up to?
Well, it's pretty amazing how I was talking to Michelle Norris at PaleoFX, and I just presented at PaleoFX a couple of weeks ago. And I remember, having the dream of becoming a functional medicine practitioner or an ancestral practitioner, and going to these conferences and sitting on the other side, as an audience member. And like when I came to naturopathic medical school, I wanted to be, I wanted to have a podcast, and I wanted to present at conferences like this. I wanted to go on my friend's podcast and talk about health and help people. And man, she said, you manifested that. You put it out there, and somehow, the world makes it happen. And it's just so humbling to have finished. And basically every goal that I've set for myself has happened. And it's because of my mentors, people like Dr. Alan Christensen, Rob Wolf, Dr. DeCoyer, all these people that have given me a chance and have allowed me to help others. And it's just amazing. It's just such a fantastic space to be on.
So you mentioned this. This was a question later down that I was going to ask, but I'll ask it now. So what did you speak about at PaleoFX this year? I
do a lot of botanical research, okay? And it is frustrating to see how people, how supplement companies or different, factions can make, all these supplements. And you've seen it, sometimes you take a supplement, and one of the best examples that I have is taking like an adaptogen formula, and it's like an energizing adaptogen formula, and it has like ashwagandha in the morning. And ashwagandha, like the scientific name for ashwagandha is Withania somnifera, as in somnifera as it makes you sleepy. So it's like contraindicated for morning. So within the paleo community, there's a lot of thirst for knowledge about botanicals. And my class was about how you can start making your own botanicals at home, and resources to go find this, the information to create the medicine in your kitchen. And we've been doing it for thousands of years. So I just wanted to share that knowledge with the people in attendance, because there's so much that you can do, from food products to actually processing different herbs and creating your own tinctures, creating your own teas, creating your own oxymels, in order to bring yourself to a higher level of health without having to rely on other people or other experts or companies in order to help you do that. So just empowering people to take their health into their own hands.
Oh, that's great. In our first interview, we talked a lot more about botanicals. So, like I said, if anybody's interested in that, please check out our first interview. I'm sure that was a fascinating talk. Out of all the other talks that you heard during the weekend, what was there one that really stuck out to you that you really enjoyed the most?
This paleo effects, it has morphed a lot, and there was a lot of information on different trends within the health space, and there was a pretty sharp delineation between keto groups and ketogenic diet right now is it's all the rage, and I was talking to my girlfriend yesterday, and in my lifetime, I'm 36 years old. This is the third iteration of the ketogenic diet that I've lived through, and I'm only 36. Okay, I've done the keto diet for a very long time, and within the past 15 years, it's showed its face 3 times in my lifetime. Like the first time was in the form of like true Atkins, and and it was like Atkins with like bars and things like that. And then a couple of years later with the South Beach diet, which was a lower carbohydrate diet, and it showed its face again, especially with books like Good Calorie, Bad Calorie. Yep. And how insulin is the root of all evil, And then as information comes around, then we start eating carbohydrates again, because carbohydrates are sometimes necessary for different people. And now, like in this present time, there's like a big fight between you eat as much fat as you want and nothing else matter. And then the other camp is more like, okay, let's be sensible about this and let's eat protein, and let's eat, manage our plate according to our necessities using macro calculations. And I fall more into that camp. It's the more sensible camp, because I've seen people get into a lot of trouble when they are just doing, unlimited amounts of fat, or they're taking exogenous ketones. People, chasing ketones instead of chasing results. And I got to meet some pretty neat people, Luis Villaseñor and Tyler Cartwright of Keto Gains, and we ended up hanging out the whole weekend. And those dudes are just legit, and what they're doing with their approach to a ketogenic diet just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I would agree with that. To me, it seems like a cyclical ketogenic diet is a really wise move for me and from my lifestyle. But I agree with everything you said. I'd like for you to hook me up with the Keto Gains guy off the air too, to have them on for sure.
Totally, and specifically when I love intermittent fasting, and I practice intermittent fasting almost every day of the year. And just knowing like the physiology of things, and learning that probably intermittent fasting is not for everyone, and accepting that diet choices are not black and white, and being able to customize that for people and for my patients, and being able to inform them and have some sensibility when it comes to diet choices has been pretty enlightening.
Yeah, I mean, customization for each patient is the art of doctoring, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. So off air, you described yourself to me as a Hashi ninja. So how about giving us a crash course on Hashimoto's thyroiditis?
And that's where, the conversation kind of leads itself, especially within the paleo community, within the ketogenic community, how I've been having this conversation with my patients very often lately, that, people that have tried everything, and you and me, we have put ourselves in a situation where we want the cases that have done the clean eating, that have done the meditation, that have gone gluten free, and they are still, they're getting better, but they're not perfect. And in school, you kind of learn, you got to meet the person where they at, or and it can be kind of frustrating, because when my patients come in, if I start with, well, let's try eliminating gluten for the next 30 days. And the person says, yeah, I've done that for the past 3 years. I'm still here. Well, what about meditation? Yeah, I've been doing that for a year and a half. What about sleeping? I sleep 9 hours and I still wake up fatigued. And that's when we have to be a little bit more granular with our approach. And the conversation that I've been having with my patients is, hey, I want to lose weight, and I still, I'm eating clean, I'm meditating, I'm doing all of the stuff that you talk about in your podcast. I've read every blog, I apply all of it, I'm taking all the supplements, and I'm still not getting there. And what's happening is that they are fighting against their physiology. When your hormones are not working properly, when your body is just not being orchestrated by your hormones the way it's supposed to be, what ends up happening is that your BMR is not what you are predicting it to be. So you might go online and putting all your macros on a calculator, or all your weight, your height, your gender, how your body fat percentage, and then it gives you like an estimated BMR. Well, if your hormones are not working properly, then that BMR is falsely elevated and you're trying to hit those calories, but your body is not utilizing those calories properly. And what I've found is that most of my patients have some sort of thyroid problem. And now I do work at an endocrinology practice, and Dr. Christensen is famous for, treating thyroid disease. So I do have a biased population that is coming to see me. But I do want to talk about Hashimoto's thyroiditis. I want to talk about a little bit, touch on Graves' disease, and most importantly, why are we suffering and why are we seeing this happen so often? And to make this long story short, is your body is attacking your thyroid because there is a problem that is confusing your immune system. And if we can figure out what's confusing your immune system, then we can reverse that autoimmune thyroid disease.
Well said.
So, let's start at a macroscopic level, okay? When we eat inflammatory foods, okay, you are irritating your intestines, you're irritating your small intestine, your large intestine, and that irritation creates tiny holes in your digestive system, and then proteins escape your digestive tract, and our body has not evolved to have full or proteins in our bloodstream. There are other things that are chains of amino acids, such as viruses and bacteria, and those are neutralized by your immune system. So when you have leaky gut or intestinal permeability, your body sees those preformed proteins and attacks them using immunoglobulins. These immunoglobulins are like keys. And it just so happens that because of molecular mimicry or how those proteins can resemble tissues in your body, that key also can fit in other tissues. And we're going to concentrate on thyroid, but that key, could be the key that opens rosacea. That could be the key that opens mental fog. That could be the key that opens psoriasis. But in the case of Hashimoto's thyroiditis, that immunoglobulin can fit on the thyroid. And when it attaches to the thyroid, it does its job, which is kind of like destruction or neutralization of that thyroid tissue. And it starts creating little cysts, or it starts creating, damage in the thyroid. And that immunoglobulin kind of shuts down your thyroid, and then you become hypothyroid. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. Now, explain. You talked about I mean, there's a lot of terms here that still confuse me to this day. Hypothyroid, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, Graves' disease. Can you define those a little bit, just to so people know exactly where we're heading and what we're talking about?
Okay, so let's start with normal thyroid function. Okay, normal thyroid function would be someone that's euthyroid, euthyroid, and that's just a thyroid that looks healthy in its tissue, that it's producing enough thyroid hormone to control the body. You gotta remember, thyroid hormone T3 and T4 actually touch every single tissue in your body. It's hard for me to think of a tissue that is not affected by thyroid function. It actually goes into the nucleus of the cell and it makes things happen. Okay, and that's where if you have bad thyroid hormone and you're not affecting the right cells, that's where you are underutilizing the amount of fuel that you're consuming, and that's why people with hypothyroid become, it start to gain weight, and that's one of the early symptoms. But because this thyroid hormone affects every single cell, You also, underutilize ATP. And that makes you fatigued. You underutilize your immune system, so that's your person that gets every cold or has a lot of infections throughout the year. Okay, so a person that has normal working thyroid, that would be an euthyroid person. Then, secondly, we have people that have subclinical hypothyroid, meaning the labs on your paper look within the range, but you are still feeling some of these symptoms. And I'm going to separate subclinical hypothyroid from Hashimoto's just as an exercise right now.
Okay.
What subclinical hypothyroid might mean is that you are not utilizing the T3 and T4 correctly. T4 is the less active form of the thyroid hormone, T3 being the more active form of thyroid hormone, and you're maybe not converting the T4 into T3. So because of that miscommunication in your system, that you're not converting that thyroid appropriately, that's when you start experiencing some of the symptoms of hypothyroidism. The fatigue, like the mental fog, maybe your hair starts to fall, maybe your weight starts to creep up. That doesn't necessarily mean that you need to start dosing with thyroid hormone. Maybe you're missing some key nutrients like selenium. Maybe your HPA axis, your pituitary adrenal axis, is not working correctly, and you're relying too much on your thyroid instead of your adrenals, or maybe your sex hormones are not optimized. And if that three-legged stool is out of balance, everything suffers. So it could be as simple as sleeping more, taking care of your adrenals, eating a nutrient-dense diet, and kind of minimizing the stressors that you can control. And then that subclinical hypothyroid can be fixed without having to add thyroid hormone. Then there is Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Hashimoto's thyroiditis is when you have an autoimmune problem that is, an autoimmune attack on your thyroid. Now, there's different philosophies of when to diagnose someone with Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And I believe, or I am of the clinical practice, that any amount of autoimmune antibodies to your thyroid, to your TPO, the thyroid peroxidase, or your thyroid globulin, is enough to qualify someone as having Hashimoto's. So that's when your immune system is actually attacking your thyroid. Now, you can detect Hashimoto's early, where all your thyroid labs are within the range, okay? But you have those antibodies, and we should minimize those antibodies to prevent thyroid damage. Because remember, those antibodies are attacking, and that's how people develop cysts, or they develop damage to their thyroid. And so that Hashimoto's thyroiditis can be reversed by using some thyroid hormone. And the theory is that anytime you take a hormone, the gland that produces that hormone kind of goes a little bit dormant. Mm-hmm. And if you remove the obstacle to health, meaning let's say you have toxic metals, maybe you have chronic infection like Lyme, like Epstein-Barr, or maybe you have food allergies. If you remove the insulting factor and you kind of like let your thyroid rest, the thyroid has a chance to regenerate itself, to become healthy again, and then you reduce your risk for developing cyst or thyroid cancer. And then because you're taking a little bit of thyroid, your thyroid levels come back to normal, and then you feel great, and then you start working on the HPA axis. So that would be Hashimoto's thyroiditis or autoimmune thyroiditis. And then thirdly, we can talk about Graves' disease. Now, Graves is very interesting because you remember how we're talking about keys and how those immunoglobulins can attack and turn off the thyroid. Well, Graves' disease is, it's another face of the same coin. It's basically an autoimmune attack on your thyroid, but instead of shutting down the thyroid, that key actually turns on the thyroid, and you start dumping tons and tons and tons of thyroid hormone into your body. So in early Graves, you start having like palpitations, and you start having, hair falling, and symptoms of being too revved up. As your body starts becoming thyroid resistant, then it starts, just like insulin resistant, and you don't accept any more insulin, the body stops accepting any more thyroid. And even though you have high levels of hormone in your bloodstream, it stops activating the cells, and you can start presenting with some of the same symptoms as someone that has Hashimoto's thyroiditis. So you start having like weight gain, fatigue, mental fog. So it is very interesting how this autoimmune condition can either turn on or turn off your thyroid and present with the same symptoms. And you just have to differentiate or try to figure out what's happening in your thyroid and how to reverse that autoimmune attack in order to bring you back to homeostasis.
So, so in your practice, you're using blood work, I would assume, to determine this?
We're using blood work to figure out, your T3 to T4 ratio, your TSH. In certain cases, when we think there's a problem where maybe it's not an autoimmune attack, but you're just a lousy converter, we can use reverse T3. We can use nutritional analysis to make sure your nutrition status is perfect. We use toxic metal analysis just to make sure that you don't have that toxic metal insult that's creating this autoimmune response. Food allergy panels, elimination diets, autoimmune paleo. It is really a very comprehensive way of identifying the problem. And once we identify the problem, it's a systematic review of how to address that problem.
That's beautiful. That's right in your bio. It says, finding the obstacles to health, and that's what you seem to be doing now.
And we also we also subscribe to the thinking that you don't need to drop thousands and thousands of dollars doing every single specialty test under the sun in order to figure out what's going on. A lot of subclinical hypothyroid patients and some Hashimoto patients might have anemia, and iron is needed for the peroxidase in order to convert T4 to T3, and it could be as simple as having an iron IV or reintroducing meat into your diet and fixing your iron status, and all of a sudden you're not hypothyroid anymore. So we use conventional labs. We play the numbers. If you're a 27-year-old girl, that has eaten a standard American diet for the past 27 years, we're probably going to focus more on your nutrition. But if you're a 27-year-old girl who comes from Flint, Michigan, we might be more interested in looking at your toxicity to see what's going to make more sense and to bring, health as fast as possible.
Yeah, it makes sense. Now, we know you have a passion for botanical medicine. How did this knowledge help, or what have you added to the practice when you're working with people with thyroid disease in terms of botanical medicine?
One of the biggest things that I've helped with at the practice is putting together a very, very solid dysbiosis protocol, because it is one of the biggest things that causes this molecular mimicry, or this ability of confusing your immune system, is by, because of intestinal permeability. And when you have dysbiosis, that insulting bacteria can create the inflammation that opens up the gaps in your intestines to create this intestinal permeability or leaky gut. So being able to identify good botanical protocols that are narrow enough to not affect you systematically, but broad enough to affect, maybe spore-forming bacteria or gram-negative bacteria or viruses or candida in the most gentle of ways, was very important. And for the people that haven't listened to the previous show, I really don't like using single herbs. I really like using comprehensive botanical mixtures that have different mechanisms of action in order to be able to attack that bacteria in so many different ways. Another thing that I found as a big needle mover are chronic infections. Specifically, have you ever heard of MARCoNS?
No. What is that?
Oh, so that's multiple antibiotic resistant coagulase negative Staphylococcus aureus. And funny little bacteria, because we usually think of like strep being as a bad bacteria. And strep is really bad because it's a coagulase positive bacteria. So when it infects your tonsils, it starts eating away your tonsils, and it's very inflamed, and it creates a lot of acute inflammation. So it hurts, and we go to the doctor, and the doctor gives us, some antibiotic. Okay. I started noticing that there was a lot of people coming in with chronic sinus infections. And when you have chronic sinus infections and you give that antibiotic, it might kill like 90% of the infection, but then that infection comes back with a vengeance, because that 10% of the population in your sinuses becomes resistant eventually to whatever antibiotic you're using. So MARCoNS, or multiple antibiotic resistant coagulase negative Staphylococcus aureus, it's not as inflammatory as strep. And because it's not as inflammatory, because it's coagulase negative, it's not eating away and inflaming, it goes unnoticed for way longer. But it's still a bacteria, and it's still creating an inflammatory process that the body is unable to attack, because it's like the sinuses are kind of like outside of you, but inside of you. And because we keep trying to kill it with antibiotics, we train it to become resistant to it. So now you have this perfect soup of a bacteria that is persistent, a bacteria that is creating inflammation, low-level inflammation, that has been present there for many, many, many years. And then and it goes unnoticed because you don't put together that maybe all the symptoms of fatigue, maybe all the symptoms is because of this excess of bacteria that is very close to my brain, and it's just shedding all of these bad things and creating some level of inflammation. Because this bacteria becomes resistant to multiple antibiotics, and then it also creates biofilms. And biofilms are this scaffolding that the bacteria create in order to protect itself from antibiotics or your immune system or other bacteria. It's able to protect itself, and it becomes like a really persistent low level of inflammation that stays there in your sinuses. And by using biofilm inhibitors and different botanical or antibiotic sprays, we can, eliminate these infections. And man, it's like night and day. I think that was one of the coolest things that I learned about through my research and through the input of conferences and reading blogs, and being able to identify and getting a good nasal sinus swab, it's like life changing for some of my patients that actually have these infections. Pretty neat stuff. If you guys are interested to learn more about Marcons, you can listen Dr. Shoemaker's website. And Marcons can be a co-infection with fungal infections, and just life-changing for people that have this type of infection.
Brilliant. And is there any combination of botanicals that you use specifically for the thyroid itself?
For the problem with botanicals is that they're not well standardized. Okay,
Right.
so if someone has like overt thyroid disease, and hypothyroid, or there's a very famous combination for the treatment of hyperthyroidism using melissa and lycopus and just 3 different herbs. The problem is that hyperthyroid can be dangerous because you are just dumping so much thyroid hormone, and from bottle to bottle, from herbalist to herbalist, you're going to have a lot of variation in the extraction method, in the activity of the botanical, and I really don't want to mess around with that. So I do rely more on things like lithium, on things like fluoride, on things that can be very well standardized to create to be able to repeat this treatment and have success. Now, when it comes to subclinical hypothyroid, that's when we can use adaptogenic formulas in order to balance the HPA axis. And by balancing the HPA axis, then we can allow the thyroid to work perfectly, allow the adrenals to work perfectly, and boost your sex hormones to get that all in sync. And amazing combinations like having a little bit of gotu kola in the morning, and some holy basil, some licorice if you have a little bit of cortisol dysregulation problems, and then things at night, using adaptogens like Withania somnifera or ashwagandha, having a little calming tea with maybe some chamomile and maybe some other adaptogens in order to help you have a restful night and help you modulate and actually fix that HPA axis. That's when herbs become like super important for a patient, and that's always the goal, to try to get them to a place where they can use the least invasive treatment in order to help them get better.
Yeah, that should be the goal for every patient. Now, if somebody wanted to get more of Dr. Guillermo Ruiz, how do they do that?
Well, my practice, if you're interested in becoming a patient, integrative health is the name of my practice. You can call 480-657-0003. That's 480-657-0003. And we're working on some really cool things in the future to kind of like scale up the ability to help as many people as possible, because unfortunately, Hashimoto's is very prevalent and thyroid disease is very prevalent, but there's not a lot of practitioners that are doing it or that are savvy or have had the experience, on how to treat Hashimoto's. So we're working on really cool projects in order to be able to help as many people as possible. And if you want to just listen to me ramble about, exercise or diet or herbs or different bacteria, you can listen to my podcast, 3030health.com. I know I'm always we're always referring people to each other,
Yeah.
Dr. DeCoyer, and like that interview with Paul Ehrlich, that was amazing.
Yeah, that's fascinating stuff, right? So simple and so profound, right?
Yeah, and like, oh man, like those two were so awesome, Dr. Khan and Dr. Ehrlich. That was amazing. So if you want to learn more about this ancestral way of health, that would be the best way of doing it.
Great. My final question for you, pal, is, and I've been asking this for probably the last 20 or 30 podcast interviews I've done. From waking to sleep, do you have a routine, a rhythm? Do you meditate in the morning? What kind of supplements do you take? Do you exercise? How do you wind down at night? What does your day look like?
Okay, so my day, it has changed a lot now that I have an actual schedule. And usually now that I don't have like exams and I have to stay up all night studying, like today, I like to intermittent fast. And it's probably not the best for me because I do have a history in my family of hypothyroidism, but I just love the mental clarity that I get from those 16 hours of fasting. And every once in a while I do have breakfast, but I make my coffee in the morning and I drink about 16 ounces of coffee. And I measure, to the gram my water, and I measure to the gram my coffee beans, and they're freshly roasted. And I make my 16 ounces of coffee, and I have a really cool thermos that keeps my coffee warm for 18 hours. So I drink my coffee over like 8 hours, and that's how because I love coffee. And if I had free range, I could drink 60 ounces a day. So that's how I kind of curb myself from drinking a lot of coffee. And then I see patients, and I'm in a busy practice. I've developed a new habit. Okay, I'm having some herbal tea around 3 p.m. and I'm really enjoying a combination of lemon and ginger. And I find the combination of lemon and ginger to be energizing without being jittery. So if you guys can get like some lemon rinds and some fresh ginger and just steep it for a couple of minutes in hot water and just sip it, it just feels amazing. And I've been enjoying that little, that new tea that I've started, drinking. And then I come home and I'll do some research. I'll record some podcasts. I have dinner. And I skipped lunch. I make an extra big dinner, and I partition it into two. And I have my lunch is the dinner from the night before, and that's a very easy way of doing a couple of things. Keeping yourself honest and eating clean food, because that's a personal decision you make 3 times a day. In my case, 2 times per day. And I want to make sure that I'm not tempted into going out to eat or ordering in, or having my food that I've brought in from the night before. Helps me maintain a good weight and keeping my food as clean as possible. And I'm a creature of habit, and that's one habit that I've been nurturing, because for so many reasons it is so easy for you, or so beneficial for you to eat your leftovers, for financial reasons, for quality reasons, and just overall, you're nurturing yourself. I had a guest, a couple of months ago in my podcast, and I'm going to ask you the same question, Noah. When was the last time you forgot to brush your teeth?
I can't remember the last time I forgot to brush my teeth.
And just think about it, like you can go to bed and you forgot to brush your teeth. You'll get up, you'll turn on the lights, you go brush your teeth, and then you'll finally be able to go to bed.
Yep.
So that is the most important thing that we can do as human beings to establish good health habits. Repetition. We've been brushing our teeth since we're 2 or 3. And because we're doing this every day, without fail, now it has become so ingrained into our daily routine that missing the toothbrush at night will completely derail you, and you will unable to continue on in your journey unless you go and brush your teeth. Now imagine if we could do that with everything we do, from our eating habits, from our meditation, our exercise, if we can create those habits and we can make sure that we don't miss a day and we are true to them and we do them, we're going to create this health space that if you didn't do that healthy habit, you're going to feel, like you haven't done your whole day, and you're going to be able to maintain them. No one ever does like, let's do a 30-day brushing challenge. For the next 30 days, we won't miss a day. No one does no one falls off the wagon from brushing your teeth. So let's pick our health habit that you want to incorporate into your lifetime, and let's try to make it as important as brushing your teeth, and it's going to become second nature.
All right. That's a great. I'm going to start asking that question as well too. Now, if I can only get my kids to tell the truth, and I have to watch them like hawks when they're brushing their teeth. For some reason, kids don't think it's cool to brush their teeth. I don't get it. Anyway.
But eventually, our persistence works.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. because I remember being, trying to avoid brushing my teeth growing up, but eventually that persistent works. And so if you have kids that don't want to eat their veggies, just keep at it. Eventually, it's going to become habit, and eventually they're going to discover that it's going to be second nature.
I totally agree. Any last words?
Just I'm going to be presenting at AHS in July. So if you're in Bozeman, Montana, and you want to see some really cool presenters, Dr. Michael Ruscio, Diana Rogers, Mike Mew, who inspired Dr. Ehrlich and Dr. Ken into writing that book. I'll be presenting there. I'm going to be presenting on antibiotic resistance to botanicals. And it's just going to be a blast.
Since you said, is it true that bacteria and viruses can't form resistance to natural substances like botanicals? Is that an accurate statement?
It's an accurate statement, and I wrote a paper about it, and it was published by the Journal of Evolutionary Health and Nutrition. And I'm going to send you the link to so you can post it on the notes. Because now, I love botanicals, so this is not something. It's not like I'm against using botanicals. The research that we did, actually, we only use single botanicals. So if you use singles, you are only exposing the bacteria to one mechanism of action, and the reproduction cycle of bacteria is so short that eventually you're going to hit a mutation that is going to allow the bacteria to survive that mechanism of action. But if you start combining botanicals, now the bacteria is going to be so much less likely to be able to mutate 3 different mechanisms of action, and you prevent the ability of the bacteria to become resistant. And just like bacteria can become resistant to actual pharmaceutical antibiotics, bacteria can become resistant to single antibiotics.
All right. So definitely send me that link. I would appreciate that, and so would our audience for sure.
Totally. It's a pretty fascinating paper because we have this idea, plants, they have thousands of phytochemicals. The problem is that it takes so much energy, in order to create a defense mechanism, that it is unlikely evolutionarily for the bacteria to have to spend tons and tons and tons of energy creating different methods of defense. They just create one, they stick to it, become really good at it, and that's why certain species of trees can be fulminated by viruses or plagues. So yeah, it's very interesting.
Great. My name is Dr. Noah DeCoyer, your co-host, and you are listening to the Beyond Your Wildest Genes podcast. If you like what you've heard today, please share this with your friends and encourage them to subscribe on iTunes. You can subscribe to our weekly email at www.beyondyourwildestgenes.com. Thank you, and as my oldest son Hayden says, be awesome and never unawesome.
1, 2, 3, 4. get my shoes and out the door. 5, I'm alive. 6, 7, 8, feeling